Hi, welcome to one of the first podcasts I've ever created. My name is Sabrina Waldron, and I am a ninth grade English teacher. And if you're watching this podcast, I teach one of your children. I guess that's what all this new technology is about, having the teachers be students as well. This is a good way for me to get to introduce myself to you, although I can't be at parents' night tonight. I apologize, I have a family wedding to go to. So let's just start out with a little bit of information about who I am. My background, I have a bachelor's in English from the University of Florida, go Gators. I have a master's in comparative literature from New York University, and I have a master's of arts in teaching English from Brooklyn College. So part of how I got to all of those different pieces of my education, I grew up in South Florida, although born in New Jersey. And after I graduated from the University of Florida, where I studied English, I went to New York for a comparative literature program for my PhD. I was in my PhD program for a while, and I really wanted to become a college professor. I stuck around long enough to TA, but I also realized that most of the professors there, they did their teaching as something to do between their books, or while they were trying to become public intellectuals. And I wanted to get in depth a little bit more with my students. And teaching at the college level just didn't provide me with that opportunity. So I left my PhD program after completing my master's, and I took a couple of jobs, which I'll talk more about in a moment. And then I ended up becoming a teacher in New York, and I moved to Atlanta a year ago. So I'm starting my second year here in Atlanta, still getting used to the traffic and driving after taking cabs and subways for 8 years, but I am enjoying it. So some of what I did after my master's program, I worked at the Atlantic Philanthropies, an international foundation, doing some group work, some grant work. I worked at an organization called Libraries for the Future, where I did helped out with investment and innovation in libraries and professional development for librarians, helping to turn libraries into community centers as well as resource centers, and more than just what people think of as repositories for books. After that, I got my MAT at Brooklyn College, and I worked for a small progressive public school in Brooklyn called Lions Community School. I did some interesting experiential work there with students, getting them out into all New York City had to offer, into the museums and other cultural organizations. And it's all of that I bring with me here to Westminster, and I was really blessed to have a position here when I moved here a year ago. So kind of just a little bit about me and why I teach. My background, my family is Caribbean. We're from Trinidad and Tobago. My parents were actually born there, and my older siblings, although I was born in the States, but try to get back as much as I can. I was there last March, in fact. And the nice thing that my parents did for me growing up, I loved literature, read a lot of canonical works and the classics and enjoyed them, but my dad also made sure that I was reading stuff from Caribbean authors to kind of stay in touch with that piece. And I really enjoy bringing that new and global perspective to my students, making sure that we read the canonical text, we read Shakespeare, we read Joyce, we read Updike, we read Lorraine Hansberry, an American canonical text, which is A Raisin in the Sun. But I also bring in contemporary pieces and pieces from other writers, looking at Bessie Head, for instance, who's an African woman writer, or Khaled Hosseini, that I'm so happy is part of the ninth grade curriculum with the Kite Runner. And more than anything, I'm really excited just to work with students, work with high schoolers, and especially ninth grade students, which is such a exciting and formative time in their life. So a little bit about the course and what we'll be doing. I've titled the course, well actually, we have titled the course Characters in Conflict, but more than anything what comes out in this year is looking at family dynamics. So the text that we're looking at, Backpack Literature, which are short stories and poetry unit, and we're in the middle of short stories right now. A Raisin in the Sun will follow up with Purple Hibiscus by Chimamanda Adichie, a Nigerian author. We will be doing, I'm sorry, not Hamlet, but Macbeth, in fact, and The Kite Runner we end the year with. So you can get some of our course expectations from our fall syllabus, which your child should have a copy of, and they can also access it on Schoology, which I'll get to in a moment. The main materials that I really want them to have an organized binder for notes, for free writes, and for also graded work that gets handed back to them. And also note cards. I use note cards a lot for kind of really quick check-ins for understanding. We do a lot about building our discussion skills, coming up with discussion questions for class, bringing them in so we can sort them out and go through them or for other students to read them. So there'll be a lot of little assignments that will be done on note cards. So please make sure that your child has a good pack of 3x5 note cards. Some resources for them this year, of course, back work. Coming and seeing me during back work, anything that they might not understand, or just to talk and hang out and pick a book off my shelf. The Writing Center is another great resource in the basement of Askew. Anytime they have a paper due for any class, it doesn't have to be English, they can go meet with different teachers. We've got history teachers, we've got English teachers, we have junior high and high school teachers there. Schoology, which is what we're using this year for our resource management in my English class, and just a good way of connecting with the students, making sure they're organized, and having discussions as homework online that we can refer to. Of course, you can always contact me through email, sabrinawaldron@westminster.net. Please do, since I wasn't able to meet with you today. I'd love to hear from you. And of course, at my school phone number, 404-609-6213. So here's a screenshot of Schoology. The nice thing about Schoology, and I think what the kids love, is that they're able to interface with this easily because it looks like Facebook. But it doesn't have the functionality of Facebook where they can friend each other and write on each other's walls. It's mainly for academic purposes. If you see on the right-hand side, for instance, you'll see all the homework that they'd have. In the middle, you see little updates I might send to them about vocab words or where we're meeting. And if other teachers in the school are using Schoology, when they look at their page, not only will they see my assignments on the right-hand page, but all of the classes that are used through Schoology. It's been really nice. They also do reading responses on there, which if you ask your child about it, you'll see that they've written a reading response so far, they've commented on someone's. And it's really a good way to have kind of that discussion about a text before they come to class, partly for me to see where their understanding is and where I need to guide my thoughts when I come in, but also for them to have that dialogue, and it's not just a one-way piece of doing homework anymore. So of course, you probably just want to see your students in action. So here's a couple of shots that we've taken from class over the past few weeks. A big difference with high school English is that it's very discussion-based. Having students talk to each other, figure out what they're thinking, and not so much of me just telling them what to think and helping to guide it. So here's an activity we did where we used yarn as each person kind of talked and spoke up to kind of visualize the way a good discussion should look this web. So they had fun having the text out in front of them, tossing the yarn around, and since then discussion has been a lot better because they're able to kind of see visually what happens when a good discussion takes place. And that's what our web looked like after the fact. Here's some of the collaborative work we've been doing, working on short stories, analyzing them. Having them work in groups is really key, as well as having whole class discussion. But we also take time to do independent free writes and work on essays as well. Students sometimes in groups write paragraphs and send them in, and then we're able to edit them together. We also take time sometimes, and next year will be one-to-one with laptops, but a lot of the historical context of our stories matter, and we've been reading, we were at Everyday Use by Alice Walker, and we had some of the students just kind of come in, bring their laptops, look up some of the stuff about the 1960s that they didn't quite get, and follow up with that. So it was just a really great thing to have in class. They're excited to talk to each other about the text, to bring in the historical context, as well as doing the literary analysis. So I hope that you know a little bit more about my classroom and about me. And please feel free to send me an email about your student, about your child, what I should know about them that I can help support them a little bit better this year. I look forward to meeting you all. Thank you.